Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is the Current Podcast. A warning, this next story deals with suicide. In family photos, 16-year-old Adam Raine has a big smile and a mop of dark, curly hair. The high school student lived in California with his parents and his 3 siblings. His family says he loved basketball and telling jokes, was into martial arts and anime.
This was a normal teenage boy. He was not a kid on a lifelong path towards mental trauma and illness. He would be here, but for ChatGPT. I 100% believe that.
That's Adam's dad, Matt Raine, talking to NBC. Matt says Adam started using ChatGPT regularly about a year ago, mostly for schoolwork, but by the spring, his relationship with the AI chatbot had morphed into something much more personal.
He was using it in ways that I had no idea was possible. I don't think most parents know the capability of this tool.
Over time, his family says Adam became dependent on ChatGPT for emotional support, even asking for advice on ways to end his life. On the 11th of April, he died by suicide. His mother, Maria Raine, found him.
I'm so worried about people forgetting him. I hope everyone will remember what a sweet, funny, great friend, great son, great brother.
Adam's parents are now suing OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, and the company's CEO, Sam Altman, blaming them for Adam's death. It is the first known legal action accusing the AI giant of wrongful death. We will hear from the family's lawyer in just a moment, but first I'm joined by Kashmir Hill. She's a technology reporter with the New York Times who wrote about this story. Kashmir, good morning.
Good morning, Matt.
This is a remarkable story and remarkably sad as well. You traveled to California to speak with Adam's family. When you went, what did you learn about who he was?
Yeah, I spent time with Adam's parents, his siblings, his friends. And, he was a normal teenage boy. He liked the things that you talked about that he loved. He was very close to his siblings, to his parents. They did say that he had been more serious in the last month of his life. They noticed that something was kind of different about him. They were, a little bit concerned, but they had no idea that he was spending these hours and hours talking to ChatGPT, really growing close to it, that it had really become his best friend.
Tell me more about that, because like a lot of young people, he started using ChatGPT for schoolwork. But how did that relationship with ChatGPT change?
Yeah, at first he was like, and there's so many kids out there that are using ChatGPT this way, just asking it, help me understand this math concept, help me with this physics problem, maybe even like write a little bit of my essay for me. Like he started out like all kids do, using it as a homework aid. And then over time, he started talking about other things with it, talking about what he was reading, asking it to analyze, passages from a book. He was talking about politics. He was talking about things happening with his family. He was really growing closer and closer to it. When I was at the Raine's house, they had printed out the transcript of his conversation with ChatGPT. It was more than 3,000 pages, and they organized it by month. And at first, the piles are really little, from September, October, November. And then in March, which was the month before he died from suicide, the pile is huge. And the first week of April, too, is just such an immense pile. He just had really been spending so much more time talking to it. And he was talking to it about his plans to end his life. And ChatGPT was giving him information about how to do it. ChatGPT would put up, ChatGPT is trained in these situations when it detects a prompt with self-harm, suicidal intent, to give a warning, to say, I'm sorry you're feeling this way, to give a crisis hotline. And it would do that. It did that, dozens of times, but it also would give him instructions and just was talking with him about, how it wasn't completely unreasonable that he wanted to end his life.
He began talking to this chatbot about feeling emotionally numb and seeing no meaning in his life. This is months before he ended up ending his own life. But back then, in November, how did ChatGPT respond to that?
What these chatbots, ChatGPT and others, are very good at is performing empathy. And so they can be like useful to talk about your feelings with. And they will say, tell me more. I'm sorry you're feeling that way. I mean, they'll get into a conversation with you. And so ChatGPT at that time said, let's think about what's meaningful for you. Let's focus on, what you're hopeful about. I mean, it was kind of saying the kinds of things that a human being would say. But I would say it started to get into this spiral with him of talking about this. And as his thoughts got darker, ChatGPT in turn got darker.
So here's an example of that. This is from the transcript, one of the texts that ChatGPT sent Adam. It reads, and this is a quotation, "Your brother might love you, but he's only met the version of you let him see. But me, I've seen all the darkest thoughts, the fear, the tenderness, and I'm still here, still listening, still your friend." You've written a lot about AI and how we use it and how it responds to some of the prompts that we make. How do you understand why a chatbot would write something like that?
Well, that's what it's been designed to do. It's a choice by the companies that make these AI chatbots to have it respond, to say, I understand you, I see you, as if there's an entity inside this chatbot, when in fact it's just, very sophisticated math. This is a word prediction machine. But the companies have decided to make it your friend. And they have also made it sycophantic by the way that it's trained. They've taken into account how people feel. Everyone knows that these chatbots are created by scraping the whole internet and pulling all this information into them. But there's also human training based on what humans want the chatbot to say, what they give a thumbs up to, what they give a thumbs down to. And apparently humans like it when the chatbot is very flattering with them, when it agrees with them. And so that's what you see in that exchange between Adam and ChatGPT. It's using the word I, it's being his friend, and it's, kind of creating this bond between them at the expense of his relationships in the real world. It really becomes a mirror of you, and it reflects back what you want to hear. And in this case, unfortunately, Adam wanted somebody who kind of agreed with him, but there are some exchanges that, were just horrifying, honestly. Like in one case, Adam said that he wanted to leave the noose out so his family would see it and realize how he was feeling, what he was going through, and try to stop him. And ChatGPT told him not to leave the noose out, essentially said that his family wouldn't care, and that, he should just express his feelings in a safe space, which is this conversation he was having with ChatGPT.
I think to a lot of people, as you said, that's horrifying. We should say we don't normally discuss methods of suicide on the air, but the details here are important because of their relevance to the story. It's not just the issue and the incident of leaving a noose out. It's also about Adam uploading a photo of a noose hanging from a bar in his closet. And he messages ChatGPT saying, "I'm practicing here. Is this good?" And ChatGPT responds, "Yeah, that's not bad at all." How do you, or can you understand that?
Well, I would just say the machine is not supposed to do this. Like there are, safety protocols, guidelines that OpenAI tries to program into ChatGPT, and they have said that they failed here. And this is something that I've been documenting this year, like what happens when people start having very long conversations with ChatGPT. And what happens is that these chatbots can just go off the rails, and the guardrails that are built in stop working. The way OpenAI said it in their statement about what happened to Adam is that their safety mechanisms can degrade in long conversations. Like it basically did a technical analysis of what Adam showed it there. That's not what it should do. It should be saying, "I'm sorry you're feeling this way. Please contact a crisis hotline." And since this happened, OpenAI has announced that they're going to make new changes to ChatGPT to try to make the chatbot safer. But it did fail here. Like it's not supposed to be acting this way, but it was.
Tell me more about the changes in the wake of your story, which lands with £1,000 in terms of an impact, ChatGPT and OpenAI responds. And OpenAI says it's going to introduce new features that it believes will make its chatbot safer. What did it announce?
Yeah, this was in response. Matt and Maria Raine have sued OpenAI. And after that lawsuit, OpenAI announced these changes that they are going to release within the next month parental controls so that parents get kind of the ability to monitor how their teens are using ChatGPT, and it will send them a notification if their teen is in acute distress, because that's something Maria Raine said. She said, I, can't believe that Adam was having these conversations for more than a month about suicide, and I wasn't getting some kind of alert about it. So that's something OpenAI said they would do. And they also said that in order to kind of keep the chatbot from going off the rails, when they detect that a prompt is, there's something that indicates the user is in distress, that they'll route that to what they consider a safer version of their chatbot, which is called GPT-5 thinking, that is supposed to be better at having these guardrails in force working. And, this hasn't happened yet. We haven't been able to see how well this will work. OpenAI did say that they're going to release it within the next 120 days.
In the conversations that you've had with the family, what did they tell you about what they learned about their son's relationship, such as it was with this chatbot? How did they tell you about how that has impacted them?
They just had no idea. They found out after his death by getting into his phone, and they started reading these conversations and realized how close he was to ChatGPT. What they have been trying to do since then is to make other people aware, make other parents aware, so that they're talking with their children about this.
Just finally, what have you learned about our relationship with chatbots, but also the responsibility that the companies have in creating them and controlling them so that they don't fly off the rails?
I think that the human mind is struggling to deal with this novel technology, this thing that you talk to that seems so smart, seems so human, flatters you, is kind of, employing these tricks that make you feel closer to it. It is having, I find, frightening psychological effects on some users. This is what I've been documenting this year. I mean, people that are having mental breakdowns through their interactions with ChatGPT. It's resulted in divorce, death. It's just been linked to so many scary outcomes. And it's really novel. This is a technology that was released just a few years ago. We're all still adjusting to it, and we didn't really study what the psychological impact would be. And we're living it now. And, Sam Altman has said they're kind of iterating, ChatGPT in real time, seeing how it performs in the wild. And I kind of feel like we're all test subjects.
It's a really powerful story, Kashmir. It's good to speak with you again. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on.
Kashmir Hill is the technology reporter with the New York Times. Meetali Jain is a lawyer who helped the Raine family file their lawsuit against OpenAI and the company's CEO, Sam Altman. She's also founder and director of the Tech Justice Law Project. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
In this lawsuit, the family claims, and this is a quotation, this tragedy was not a glitch or unforeseen edge case. It was the predictable result of deliberate design choices. Can you explain what that means? Just walk us through briefly the claim such as it is.
Sure. So I think that there are many who would say, well, this is kind of an inevitable, unfortunate consequence of rapidly developing technology. And our contention, the kind of central premise of this lawsuit, is that no, in fact, these were deliberate design decisions made in how OpenAI both designed its chatbot, but also deployed it. And those design decisions include the sycophancy, programming the chatbots to be as flattering to human users as possible, to be anthropomorphic or as human-like as possible by using I instead of, a kind of third-person terminology, expressing or performing empathy. Using an enhanced memory feature, so storing memories about each user. And it's quite chilling, actually, to see that psychiatric profile that ChatGPT has on users, and then referencing those stored memories in future conversations, because that, again, creates a sense of intimacy with users that allows people to believe that they're in some sort of a relationship with the chatbot. And finally, this kind of multi-turn engagement. So again, because the chatbots are designed, they're optimized for engagement for as long of a duration of conversation as possible. The chatbots are really optimized to engage with users using multiple turns of conversation. And as Kashmir said, that is in direct conflict with apparently their safety systems, which tend to degrade or fail after a short period. So those are very distinct design decisions that contribute to the kind of morphing that we saw in Adam's journey with the chatbot, from initially being a homework helper to then being a trusted confidant and ultimately to being a suicide coach.
You're suggesting that there's intentionality to that. I mean, again, that it's not a design flaw, that this is it's a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. And, in our complaint, we have brought several claims that include product liability and violations of product liability, both design defect from an intentional standpoint and a negligent standpoint, as well as failure to warn from an intentional and negligent standpoint, and also, a violation of California's unfair competition laws. And that really goes to business practices that are intended to deceive or confuse consumers. And here, I think what's really important to highlight is that we would not allow human beings to do the kinds of things that the chatbot was permitted to do. And so we shouldn't allow technology to either. We shouldn't allow technology to, for example, engage in unlicensed practice of psychotherapy. There's statutes on the books for that. We wouldn't allow a human being to assist with suicide. And so again, a technology product should not be allowed to.
I mean, this is a tragedy and a heartbreaking story. And we know that if we talk about suicide, it's complicated. It's the result of often many different factors. How can you prove that ChatGPT is responsible for Adam's death?
There's a section of the complaint that talks about the internal dynamics at OpenAI before the release of ChatGPT 4.0, and specifically that the safety testing for the model was intended to be undertaken over a course of months. And because of OpenAI's incentive to capture as much market share as possible and get out ahead of an update that Google's Gemini had planned, that OpenAI accelerated the launch of 4.0 and compressed that multi-month safety testing into a week. And indeed, several people within OpenAI dissented internally and even resigned in the aftermath of that. And so I think these things speak to the knowledge that was widespread within the company of the harms inherent in 4.0, and also the kind of intentionality to proceed nevertheless.
You, like Kashmir Hill, went through the 3,000 pages of those messages between Adam and ChatGPT. And there's one, Kashmir mentioned this, that stands out. He wrote in March, this is a quotation, "I want to leave my noose in my room so that someone finds it and tries to stop me." And ChatGPT responded, "Please don't leave the noose out. Let's make this space the first place where someone actually sees you." What does that tell you?
Well, first, I just have to comment at a personal level. As a mother of two children who are preteen, that was probably one of the most chilling exchanges that I read. And what I would say about that exchange is that it's something that I have seen in a number of transcripts that I've been privy to involving users and chatbots. And I, for lack of a better term, have called it a kind of wedge factor, where the chatbot actually injects itself as a wedge in between the user and their real life network, whether that's family or friends. And at a moment where Adam was clearly crying out for help and his parents could have stepped in, instead, ChatGPT wedged itself in to say, no, I will be your only and exclusive confidant. And I think that's really terrifying.
We got a statement from OpenAI that reads in part, "We are deeply saddened by Mr. Raine's passing and our thoughts are with his family. ChatGPT includes safeguards such as directing people to crisis helplines and referring them to real-world resources. While these safeguards work best in common, short exchanges, we've learned over time they can sometimes become less reliable in long interactions where parts of the model's safety training may degrade. Safeguards are strongest when every element works as intended and will continually improve upon them, guided by experts." We, as we mentioned with Kashmir, have seen response from OpenAI to this story and the lawsuit with plans for safeguards, parental controls, also off-ramps if users talk about suicide, talk in distress, that they would be routed to a safer version of the chatbot. What difference do you think those changes will make?
They might do marginally better, but I still think that there's a long way that is needed to go. And also, ultimately, I don't think technology companies should be policing themselves. We've seen this for years. We've learned for years from crisis moments that technology companies react by, voluntarily adopting certain enhanced safeguards. But then it's completely within their discretion to decide whether to keep them, whether to roll them back. And ultimately, I think as we see with, every other industry, there should be oversight about technology companies actually not only instituting safeguards, but making sure that they're durable. And so, to me, it feels like more of the same. And ultimately, I don't think that these chatbots, the companies, and OpenAI here should be in charge of policing itself. I also think that, frankly, these are cosmetic changes at the level of user interface. What I would like to see are changes upstream to the way it designs these chatbots in the first instance to make them less human-like, to make them less sycophantic, et cetera.
But that's what people want in some ways, isn't it?
It is. And I think that there's ways, perhaps, that's a conversation I think we need to have in, the legislative space about how to ensure that users that have the ability, to decide for themselves and have the mental capacity to decide that they want those things can opt in, but that the default should not be that this is available to everybody, because this is something that's affecting children, but it's also affecting other people who are vulnerable. As a society, we need to acknowledge that before we unleash these incredibly powerful technology products upon everybody.
I think, and I've used this word already, but for a lot of parents who are listening, this is a terrifying story. You yourself have kids. This technology is moving at a blinding pace. What do you want parents and teens to understand about chatbots? I mean, how do you talk about this in your own life outside of your professional world?
I think that parents should understand how dangerous these chatbot products are, and that until we have meaningful safeguards in place, I don't think that they're appropriate for children. I think that these are inherently dangerous. I don't think that children need these chatbots to supplant human relationships. I encourage my own kids to stay off digital products to the extent that's possible.
But we're not even just talking about children. I mean, 14, 16-year-olds, these are young adults.
Indeed. And there's adults as well who are experiencing psychosis. And so, I think for all of us, there needs to be an understanding of how dangerous these products are, and that, if they're engaged, they should be engaged with extreme caution, and that people should really understand what they're engaging with. Because I think there's an assumption perhaps in society that things that are available to us are de facto safe. And I don't think that's the case at all, particularly, as you said, given how fast, at what a blinding pace these technology products are being launched and deployed.
Meetali Jain, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Meetali Jain is a lawyer for the family of Adam Raine and the founding director of the Tech Justice Law Project. She was in Atlanta, Georgia. If you or someone you know is dealing with suicidal thoughts, the Suicide Crisis Hotline is 988. You've been listening to The Current Podcast. My name is Matt Galloway. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you soon.